Dividing decimals is what we're going to look at in this video. It's split into three parts. We're first going to look at dividing a decimal by a whole number. Then we're going to look at dividing a whole number by a decimal, so the other way around. And then we're going to look at dividing a decimal by a decimal. So the way my videos work, I'm going to do the example on the left, which is I do. You are then going to press pause and have a go at the example on the right, which is you do. So looking at this first example here, we have 3.6 divided by 4. So I'm just going to use the bus stop method to do this. You have 3.6 divided by 4. So now 4 doesn't go into 3. So we then look at the next number. The next number is a decimal point. So we can pull that decimal point up, so that can come here. And now we can basically just ignore the decimal down here. So now we can look at, well, we have 3 and 6. How many times does 4 go into 36? That's 9. So the answer is 0.9. Again, hopefully you've pressed pause and had a go at the example on the right. We're going to use the same bus stop method. We have 9.9. So how many times does 3 go into 9? Well, the answer there is 3. We then look at the next thing. And the next thing here is a decimal point. So we can pull that decimal point up. So that decimal point goes there. And we can just basically rub it off here. And then we have the 9 left. So how many times does 3 go into this 9? That would also be 3. So the answer here is 3.3. So looking at one more example like this. So again, exact same scenario. The bus stop method, how many times does 5 go into 6? Well, it goes 1 times with the remainder of 1. Now 5 doesn't go into 1. So the next point we look at is, well, we've got a decimal here, so we can pull that up. So if we pull that up, that's a decimal there. And we can essentially now just ignore that. So we can pull the 2 down. Well, how many times does 5 go into 12? 2 times. It gives us a remainder 2. We pull the final 5 down. How many times does 5 go into 5? That's 5 times. So the answer here is 1.25. We're just using the bus stop method, but we're just taking care when it comes to the decimal point. So again, hopefully you've pressed pause and had a go at this. Now 4 doesn't go into 3. So we look at the next thing, which is a decimal point. So we can pull that up. So we can put a dot there. You can put a 0 before if you want. And then we look at the next number, which is a 2. So we can now effectively ignore this. So if you look at 32, well, how many times does 4 go into 32? So we have 28. And then we have 32 after that. So we could just put that as 8. And then we look at the next number, which is a 5. Now 4 goes into 5 1 time with a remainder of 1. And we can just put a 0 there. So that gives us 3.25 divided by 4, which then gives us 2 there. 4 goes into 10 2 times. We have the 2 there. And then we can just put a 0 in there. And then that becomes, well, how many times does 4 go into 20? So that becomes a 5 there. And that is 0.8125. So a little bit more involved in this one. But again, the exact same steps. So here's some practice questions for you to go at, press pause and have a go. Here are the answers, mark your work. And now, before we move on, so I just wanted to clarify that, of course, 8 goes into 4 2 times. But if I now multiply both of these by 10, that gives me 80 divided by 40. The answer is still the same because I've multiplied them both by the same number. The answer is still 2. If I was to multiply them both by 100, because I've multiplied them both by the same number, the answer is still the same. Okay, so I just wanted to be clear on that. And that's not just timesing it by 10. You could times it by any number. As long as you've multiplied both this and this by the same number, you will end up with the same answer. So moving on. Now what's different here is we're dividing by a decimal. We don't want to divide something by a decimal. So I want to get rid of this decimal. So I'm going to hop it once to the right by multiplying this by 10. But whatever I do to that side, I have to do to this side. So now I have this divided by this. Now whatever answer I get here, it's going to be the same as the answer there. So I just need to do this in the bus stop now. Well, how many times does 4 go into 17? Well, it goes 4 times with the remainder of 1. We have the 12 left, so that just becomes 3. And then we can just put the 0 up there. And there's the answer, 430. So the answer here and here is going to be the same. And you can always double check this with a calculator after you've finished. Again, here, we don't want to divide by a decimal. So we're going to times it by 10. And 10, that becomes 650 divided by 2. And as usual, you can just use the bus stop method at this point. Now 6 goes into that 3 times, and then we're left with the 0 there. And then we have the 5 and the 0, so that just becomes 25. So we have 3 to 5 here. Again, exact same thing here. We're just going to get rid of the decimal. We don't want to divide by decimal, so that's 290 divide by 4. And again, if you just use the bus stop method, we have 28 there, 1 0. Now 4 goes into 10 2 times, so that gives us an 8 and a remainder 2. Now we're just left with a 2. We can put a decimal there, we can put a 0 there, and now 4 goes into 25 times, so we're left with 72.5, and that is our answer. And the answer here is the exact same. Again, hopefully you've pressed pause and had a go at this. So you're going to start by getting rid of the decimal. So that then becomes 270 there. So that would, of course, turn into 270 divided by 80. And then you've just got that to deal with. So 8, 16, 24. So 3 gives us 24 there. And then 4 take away 7 is 3. We're left with a 0 there. Now 8, 16, 24 again. So we can do a 33. And 24, that gives us a 6 there. We can put a decimal there. That now becomes 60. And we can now do, well, 60 goes into 8 7 times. We have the 56, which gives us the 4. And now we've already got the decimal, so we can put a 0 there. And then a 5 there, or 5 times 8 is 40. And that gives us 0. And that is our answer. So 33.75 is the answer to this question. Now, moving on. Here's some practice questions you have to have a go at. Press pause and have a go. Here are the answers, mark your work. And now moving on, we've got a decimal on both sides. Now, what you want to remember is, they're just interested in making this number that you divide by a whole number. We don't really care about whether this is a decimal or not. That doesn't matter. This is what matters, what you're dividing by. So here we're dividing by 0.03. If you want to get rid of the decimal, so we're going to multiply this by 100, which means we must also multiply this by 100, which then becomes, well, we're going to hop the decimal 1, 2. That becomes 90 divided by 3. Let me just tidy that up a little bit. Now, and again, you can use the bus stop method, although this seems a bit more straightforward. You know, it goes into that many times, and you're left with the answer of 30. That's 32. Now, over on the right, this one's important now. So hopefully you've pressed pause and let it go. Again, we are just interested in making this a whole number. So to make this a whole number, I'll multiply by 10, and here I'll multiply by 10. Now notice, we still have a decimal on the left, and that's fine. We don't really care about that. What we really care about is this number here not being a decimal. So we now have 4 divided by 1.2. Now 4 doesn't go into 1. So we then move on. We have the decimal point. We can pull the decimal point up. The decimal point's now gone. So now we're looking at 1 and 2, which is 3. So that's 0.3 is the answer here and here. Again, looking at something a little bit more tricky, exact same concept applies. Get rid of the decimal in the number that we're dividing by. So we're dividing by 0.3 here, times it by 10, which means I must also multiply the other side by 10. And then at this point, you can just go bus stop. Well, 3 goes into 3 1 times. Cool, that's gone. You've got the 5 come down, it goes into 5 again, 1 time as well. That leaves us with a 2. Now, the next digit that we're going to look at is a decimal, so we can just pull that up, and essentially you can just ignore that decimal now. And then we can pull the 1 down. Ooh, we can pull the 1 down, and that's just going to become 7. 7 times 3 is 21. And the answer here is 11.7, and here is 11.7 as well. Again, hopefully you've pressed pause and had a go at the example on the right yourself. So again, we're just interested in this number that we're dividing by not being a decimal. So to do that, we're going to multiply this by 100 and this by 100, which means we're going to hop the decimal twice. 1, 2, so that's 712.5. We're going to hop the decimal twice there. That gives us 25. So we're now left with 712.5, and we have 25 here. Now, with the 25 times table, we're just going to go through that. So that's 25, 50, 75. So I know that 25 times 2 is going to give us 50. So I can look at the 71 to start with, and then it's just a case of doing 71 take away 50, which gives us the 21. Now 21 doesn't go into 25, so we can pull the 2 down. So we now have 212 divided by 25, and we know that 25 times 8 is 200. That gives us 12 there. Now again, we can't really do anything about the 12, so we move on to the next digit, and the next digit is a decimal, so we can pull that decimal up. So that decimal's now there, so we can essentially ignore the decimal here. So the next digit after that is a 5. Now, we just have to do, well, how many times does 125 go into 25? So that's just 5 times, and the answer here is 28.5. And with this question, it would definitely help you if you just listed out some of the 5 times table on the side here. Just list out the first 6, and that would just help you keep on track with solving this question. Now here's some practice questions for you to have a go at. Press pause and have a go. Here are the answers, mark your work. Now that's the end of this video. If you would like a full worksheet on this, there is a link in the comments below. You can have a go at the full worksheet with the answers over on the website, and do check out all my other videos, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one.